Hey community, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, I'm Dr. Blaire, a doc in clinical psychology, and on this channel we discuss psychology, inspiration, social justice, and all topics in between. First things first, hit that subscribe and bell button. You know I want to see you back next week, and of course, stay tuned because we're going to jump into and continue this conversation around They Cloned Tyrone. Keep watching. All right, so heads up, I'm going to have to break this conversation up into multiple parts. So this is part whatever is there in the description box, but we recorded it all in one setting. So it's up to you to make sure that you watch it in order. With that being said, keep watching. All right, so before we jump into this lovely conversation, let me just kind of key you up to, as you see there in the title and the description, we're going to be talking about They Clone Tyrone. Now, first off, if you have not watched this movie at least 2 times, okay, you could watch it one time. But if you had not watched it at least 2 times, I'm just going to say pause, go ahead and support this movie. I love it. The other 2 people who are here to discuss it with me also loved it. But there is so much to unpack in this movie. And I'm sure if we were all to get into a room together, we'd probably be talking about it all night long. But with that being said, we felt that it was important that we had a group conversation. So I'm really excited to introduce the 2 guests who are here with me. 2 of them are my besties, have been besties for a very long time. So first, allow me to introduce Felicia, who has been my best friend since high school. We're not going to say that the amount of years. Hey, Felicia.
Hey, Blaire, Dr. Blaire, how are you?
I am well, so happy to have you. Now, you probably have seen her face before because she probably get mad at me, but she's been on all of the TVs before here in the Chicagoland area. We've seen her on multiple news outlets. She is a Chicagoland pastry chef, and we absolutely love her. We get to brag about her and get to eat her good food. And so, also, I have here with me another bestie, and you've seen her before. So, allow me to reintroduce to you Aareyon Rivers. Hello, Aareyon. Welcome aboard.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming back. And so we are going to come together and have this group conversation about They Clone Tyrone. So as we talk about this, instead of kind of going scene by scene, we're going to kind of jump around and talk about these different themes that we all recognize. And I assure you that there's so much to unpack in each theme. So I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and watch that, come back to this conversation, join us in the conversation, even in the comments. Maybe it's going to spear off some substantial conversations within your own household or your friend groups. But I believe that this movie is worth talking about. And more importantly, it's worth us grabbing some golden nuggets that are hidden and in plain sight within this movie. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and jump into They Clone Tyrone, y'all. So how many times have you watched it?
Twice.
Like three.
Three times? Oh yeah, that's right, because you watched it with your mom, right?
Yeah. I made my mom watch it, so I was on like 3.5 by myself.
So at this point, some of y'all might be like, they got all of that. Okay, we've seen it multiple times, but this is why I'm encouraging you to watch it multiple times, because each time you go back and watch it, you're going to see and recognize more. And I feel like some of the writers probably didn't even think about all of this stuff, and some of this stuff they probably did think about. It's just so much intentionality behind it. So let me just pause, because some of you might not know I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University, and there are 2 people that I know of that are involved in this movie who are from there. The director, who is Jewel Taylor, is from Tuskegee, as well as Megan Sousa. She is an actress who's in the movie. She played Riri, that's in the salon scene, and she also was a writer, and I heard she was a producer in this as well. With that being said, I just have to shout both of them out. I vaguely remember having a class with Megan before. I feel like it was a biology class. So when I was sitting here watching, I was like, I think we had a science class together. I feel like I'm wondering, was she a biology major, and did that have a role with a lot of the scientific pieces that had to go on here? But job well done. Hats off to both of you. We are not just supporting it because of Tuskegee, but just have to continue to support it because it's awesome. And so, as I mentioned to you all, we drew out a few themes. So I want to bring out one thing that I think that theme that I believe tended to be overlooked, and that is the colors that we saw 3 of the main characters wear. Those 3 main characters are Fontaine, who's played by correct me if I'm wrong, John Boyega, right? And then Yo-Yo, who is played by Tiana Paris, and then we have Slick Charles, who was played by Jamie Foxx. So Jamie, he often had on red. Yo-Yo often had on yellow. And then Fontaine often had on green. I'm just curious what you all felt about that. What were you gathering about the meaning behind that?
Black.
Right. Black.
Everything is intentionally black.
But I just think that speaks to what you were saying earlier, like of how intentional they were about even like small details like that. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that's not something that I caught the first time watching this. So after seeing it sometime, and then Dr. Blaire bringing it out, it's like it's amazing because like little details like that matter in the film though.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't even recognize that Fontaine, he was even driving a green car. I didn't recognize that the first time. Like the first time I reckon, I'm like, okay, some color things going on here. I see they're keeping them in certain families. I didn't really think about the meaning behind it. But even the second time, I'm like, oh, he's even driving. And so when we look at those colors, y'all said black, 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 right? So we know that the color red represents the blood that was shed. The color green is the land in which we live on. Color yellow, which is representing the sun that we live under, right? And so I sat there, and for a long time, I'm like, okay, I feel like I understand how the green is showing up here. I feel like I understand even how the yellow is showing up here, but it took a while, almost to the end of the movie, for the red to click in. And so this is what I saw. I'm gonna glance down at notes, y'all, so because this is too much to kind of keep in my head. So the land, Fontaine, he's often wearing shades of green. I thought it was so interesting that I felt like was a representation of him being the foundation of that group. And so he oftentimes was like that leader. He's the one who's moving forward. He also represented a lot of instability in the foundation. And so, of course, there's a parallel here of what the three of them represent, and then the entire Black community at large, right? And so he was like emotionally would kind of go off at times. And I thought that he represented some form of a foundation, which we also know that is what the land is for us. But then I was like, okay, scratching my head, like, what is going on with this red? What is Slick Charles supposed to be representing? And so finally, it got to the end when he pulled all of the people together and they were in the position where they were getting a rope of that revolt. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he is the blood. That is the blood. He is bringing everything together and getting it. I'm like, aha, right? But it was interesting for me because Yo-Yo, who is yellow throughout, I felt like was a representation of hope. She was always the one to come back and be like, no, we can do this. Or she was the one who was to calm down. And I feel like that is also something that stereotypically, but also traditional gender role wise, that is the role that women end up playing. And so when I was kind of putting all that together, I'm like, wow, y'all did a good job on that. Like when you said, I hope y'all sat down and thought that through, because goodness, if that just fell together on its own.
But even with like Yo-Yo and her being, like you said, the hope of it, her always kind of looking forward and like, oh, we're going to Memphis and we're going here, and when this is all done, and even kind of like speaking to like that's just like how her character has always been, because she even talked about like the dreams and aspirations that she had when she was living with her grandmother, and those didn't come to pass, even like not yet, but they didn't come to pass yet, but she still kind of held on to that, and even wanting to move forward even before all of this happened. Her leaving Slick at the beginning of the movie was like, I'm going here and I'm about to be done with this, because having that sense of hope, like that drive throughout the movie. So
I agree.
I agree with everything that you both say. It also ties to Nancy Drew. I don't know if you ever read Nancy Drew as a kid, but Nancy was also the same way. She was always, we can figure this out, and I can do this and I can do that, and we'll stay positive and whatnot. But also think about her name too, Yo-Yo. What do you do with Yo-Yo? You bring it back. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I think it's all intentional. And I didn't really think about that until just now, until thinking about the colors and what everything represents. Yo-Yo is the one that brings everybody back together, bring everybody back to their right state of mind to figure out what their next steps are. And that also brings Nancy Drew in, and also brings the colors in, and also brings the, the fact that she's a female, and that's huge in our community, that we always are the ones that bring everyone together and hold us tight, and we don't get enough accolades or praise for that, but we know deep down that that's what it really is.
But here's the thing, she had an abundance of Nancy Drew books in her bedroom.
She referenced it all the time.
She did.
Yeah.
Wow, so she was an abundance of hope. Here's the other thing, and we're going to kind of transition to talking about the play on age in here. But if I remember correctly, wasn't she returning back to her childhood room when they were in there?
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw like the posters that were on the wall from years ago, or maybe even some things that are present, but it was something around her being able to preserve this childlike hope, this childlike desire that some, or even belief that something can be better than what I'm currently experiencing, which is what I believe we ended up seeing a little bit more in Junebug, who always showed up talking about SpongeBob, right? And so I always had a knee-jerk reaction because Junebug was always drinking these Capri Suns, right? And I'm like, okay, are they putting the stuff in the Capri Suns too? Are they drugging the little kids as well, right? He's always talking about the same thing and always drinking the same thing. Like, it showed a level of programming even in the youth, but there was this level of innocence that was still present in Junebug, especially in that scene. And I'm trying to think, even for those who might be going back to watch it, it's somewhere around the 120 mark, an hour and 20 minutes into the movie, where he is sitting next to Fontaine and he lifts Fontaine's spirits because Fontaine was kind of falling into a depression. He was very sad and he was dealing with all this awareness, but yet at the same time, he couldn't do anything about it. He was under, intimidation and being manipulated and controlled. And so here Junebug is like, I'm about to cheer you up. And he leans over and is like, well, you remind me of somebody. Of course, this is referring to his younger brother who had passed. And so then they have this black boy joy moment where they're squirting each other with the juice, but he not only instills a level of hope, but he brings back a piece of motivation for him. And I thought that was so beautiful. But what's also so sad for me is that I felt like this was a representation of how our men can only have that level of joy or that level of innocence. It's only preserved for youth. And then once you are quote unquote killed off at your youth and you become what is considered a man, now you must fit into these categories. You must act in these certain types of ways. There's no longer any space or opportunity for you to possess hope, for you to even tap into motivation. You must follow and be on this treadmill. And the only time that we saw Fontaine, and we don't have any proof that there was stuff inside the juice, but the only time that we see Fontaine truly have a level of joy was in that moment, because the other time was when he was under the influence of all the drugs that's inside the chicken.
Yeah. But to also speak to the age thing, like that age gap, or not even gap, but that age where men are required to, or boys are required to kind of like not show emotions and, just kind of be macho and things like that, is set at such a young age. Like, it's not even like we're giving these boys till they're 18 or 20 to do this. It's like we're requiring this out of them at 11 and 10, 8. And even like I work with kids all the time, and specifically over the summer, and there are these two twin boys, and the way that their demeanor is, it's a very like, I'm a man, I'm a macho. One of them even said to me one day, one of the counselors told him to sit down, and he came over, he was mad, he came and slammed his body in the chair, and he's like, he over here telling me to sit down like I'm some little kid. Now he's 6. He over here telling me to sit down like I'm some little kid. I said, well, baby, you are a little kid. I ain't his kid. And I was like, but you have to listen to adults when they tell you what to do. But I see this so much where kind of kids in their own spaces are making decisions as adults almost.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, I look for moments, like you say, with Fontaine and with Junebug, where moments where that childlike spirit comes out of them, and I try to increase that time, that span. So when I see them cracking a joke, or when I get them off their edge or whatever, and I'm like, okay, what's your, like, one of the kids like, I got a lot of money, I got $1 billion. I said, $1 billion? You got $1 billion? Yeah. And his brother said, I got 100 million trillion $500,000. And I was like, oh, how many numbers is that? And what you do for a living? I do this. And me and my brother made a fort. I was like, oh, a fort. What was inside your fort? So I want to go into that part, because that's what kids do. Kids make forts. They use their imagination. Let's play on that, because I can already tell that you're already being wired to no emotion, be angry, show, I'm bringing this, I'm strong, I'm not going to cry. All of these things that our boys are being programmed to think at such a young age. And so I just think like that moment was so important to have that in there, that exchange between them two, because I think they both needed it.
Yeah.
I think we saw it before that clip. we saw it, you know, during his first interaction with Junebug, and it kind of made you kind of think that, okay, maybe Junebug is his brother, or like a reincarnation of his brother, or, you know, after you get further into the movie, you know, maybe Junebug is brought back, and or, you know, his brother was brought back as Junebug, you know, Junebug. So we definitely see it before that, and I think with Fontaine, you know, having that innocence, we see it with how he is trying to get his mom to come out of the room. And trying to feed her and make sure she's okay. He kind of has a little sadness there because, and I'm guilty of it as a mom, as a single mom. You know, we work so hard, and sometimes you get home and you're tired and you don't want to interact with your kid. Let's be honest about it. But he is asking for that little bit of interaction with his mom. Maybe he wants to, you know, vent about his day, or maybe he wants to just have a conversation with her and have that childlike conversation in a sense with his parent. And a lot of the times we see that in our community where, you know, sons and mothers don't have it, or sons and fathers don't have it, or whoever the, you know, parental figure is around, they don't always get that nurturing. And then that's when you start to see them shut off. And we see that constantly. And then when Junebug comes around, and he kind of pushes him around a little bit, but like you said, Junebug is that innocence that he needs, and that's why he keeps him around, because he probably reminds him of his brother, but he probably reminds him of the younger version of himself.
That's good. You know, that's a really good perspective, like even bringing in that perspective of what he wanted from his mom. And I saw that as this is probably the only time we really see that Fontaine is consistently wanting to care for someone. Other than that, he had no one else. All he was doing was making sure that he looked after himself and that he got what he needed. But then he got pushed into this relationship with Slick Charles and also with Yo-Yo, that essentially pushed him to have to look at life from another perspective, and they go on this journey together. But outside of that, you see him trying to care for his mother, or tend to his mother, in which we see later on that she's not even in the room. Mercy. Okay. Not a whole recording. Y'all, we're gonna get into that in a minute. It grieved me. It grieved me.
Like, oh, he gives so much.
I thought the woman was eating fried fish at her friend's house. Like, that messed me up. Okay. Sorry, y'all. We're gonna get there in a second. But I saw that part of him that he can be caring and that he can tend to others. But we also have to be mindful that Fontaine only showed that part of himself when he was inside the house, which I think a lot of Black men often talk about, or I shouldn't even say Black men, Black people talk about having a sense of safety, having the feeling that I can let down my guard completely when I'm in safety, which is inside my home. I'm around people I know. I am around people that I feel are accepting of me. And when I step outside of the house, guards have to go up, either from protection of those who are around me that I feel like are danger toward me, or even from those that are outside of my community that I feel like are not accepting of me. So yeah, I think that was a beautiful yet also hurtful illustration of something that I believe a lot of our men are experiencing. I'm just curious if there are any men who are going to watch this, if that resonates with you, and if so, let us know, because I feel like one of the things that comes up, and we can kind of transition into this, is talking about women in this movie. And y'all, let me say, I have to pause and say it that way, because as much or as little as I feel like we really do see women in here, the message about it is so loud. It is so loud. Go ahead, Aareyon, what you got to say?
Well, I think that where the peak of it comes out is in the conversation they were having with and I forget his name, but the guy who essentially says he's like the cleanup crew. After they come out of the downstairs dungeon for the first time, or the second time, and he's explaining like why Fontaine is essential to this programming that they're doing, and why Slick Charles is essential to what is happening, but Yo-Yo plays no part. Comes a dime a dozen. Is kind of what he said to her. But I also think it shows how even they knew in our community how men are such a pillar in our community. So when they have these men, they set them in these different programs. It's like, either we can set you in here as the head of this for you to make this go this way, or you could be the head of this and you can make it go this way. And
Say that again, because I feel like the people in the back need to understand what you just said. Say that again.
It shows you how they even know how men are a pillar in our communities. And so the same way Fontaine was programmed or set to be a drug dealer and to keep that cycle going is the same way they could have programmed him to be a lawyer or a doctor or an entrepreneur, and the community could have flourished in a whole different type of way. So I think it shows not the community, but even in the family unit as well. But speaking of going back to the whole women piece, I think that it shows kind of how they devalue women in our community, and how it's just like your choices don't really matter in this. Your voice doesn't really matter in this. Even him, like when Yo-Yo was trying to speak out after Fontaine and Slick Charles was like, we can't do nothing.
Yeah.
Still trying to. And they go get her and they're like, you still don't matter. Oh, you tried. This was cute. He got her little note. Oh, this was actually good. It don't matter. But then he still gets, Yo-Yo still is like, using her brain and using what she has as a woman to still pull one up on them at the end. So it's like how they underestimate our intelligence and how they underestimate our value. When again, we just spoke to what she brings in this, and that level of hope and that level of push behind, because once they got it together, they're like, oh yeah, we got to go get our girl. Like,
yes, that
she was important for us.
But that there's power behind that, right? So let's just pause real quick, because I cannot have this type of conversation around and make this emphasis on, I'm not talking about traditional gender roles, okay? I want this to be known, because for people who watch this channel frequently know that I come from a biblical perspective. I'm referring to biblical gender roles, okay? Because we got a lot of different gender roles that are out there. Some we consider non-traditional, traditional, whatever you want to call it. I'm talking about the Bible ones. And when we look at the role of a man in the family unit, in the role of a woman, this is not to get into you wash dishes, I bring in the money. That's not, but I don't know how we reduced it to that when some of those things are just are cultural and they're social, not necessarily instructional from the Bible. I'm referring to instructions that are in the word around the role of a man and a woman in the family unit. Now, just to clarify, so we all know we're on the same page, because that's the case, when we look at Yo-Yo stepping up, right, of like, no, we're going to make this happen, it is a parallel of what we have seen historically within the Black community of the men are so beaten down. They have lost hope so much. They have been backed into a corner so much and pinned down so much. I'm going to try and I'm going to fight. Now, what we saw from the beginning unto the movie up into the point where she was captured, because then at that point they knew her value, but before, her value was always, you're a hoe, excuse my language for those who are clenching their pearls, but before that, that's all they talked to her about. If you pay close attention, there is a scene when Fontaine was quote unquote resurrected, or one of his clones was sent out again, and he returns back to Slick Charles' house or motel room, whatever. He returns back there to his place of living, and the other ladies that are there are in the room. They're sitting on the couch. Mind you, they were just there the day before when they knew that Fontaine got shot up. Never did that scene before. In that scene, did they ever flinch? Did they ever move? They never said anything. They just sat down there, and they were quote unquote objects or decoration in the room, because again, they always played this role of, you are reduced to only a hoe. Even the one that they went to for information, that's all she was good for. And every woman, all she represented was someone who wanted money from a man. But it wasn't until we saw Yo-Yo, the representation of hope. I feel a preach coming on. It wasn't until Yo-Yo, who is a representation of hope, the one who brought it back together, who represented that we can actually do more, the one who said, I see greater and beyond what I'm currently seeing in my life, that then she was able to resurrect within the men there, that there's something greater within you and there's more in store for you. And so when she placed those seeds in their hearts, something in them popped up one day when it started to sprout, and they said, there is value in Yo-Yo, there's value in that woman, we're gonna go get her, she's not gonna be in bondage. But then goes back to what you brought in, Aareyon. I know we're talking about women, but you brought in that element of the element of the lack of protection from the men. And so when we have that protection, or when men are in their rightful places, when women are in their rightful places, we know and they know that something happens, the unity happens, the nucleus of the family comes together, and we are able to be a lot more impactful, also known as powerful.
Mhm.
Whew, Selah.
You know, you just said something very interesting, and I don't think you realized that you said it, but you said they went to the women as a source of information, and that I don't think a lot of people are going to pay attention to at all. Even though, you know, you see the girls on the street and they doing what they doing, the night walkers, you know, whatever, they all still come back to these women because they see it. The women are the ones that see everything, right? And so they are, because sometimes, you know, men may overlook some things and they may be a little blindsided by other things. The women pay attention to everything. And regardless of what people feel or think about women, and specifically Black women, we are always the ones that people come back to for that source of information. And sometimes, a lot of the times, we are the one that people come back to for that sense of hope. And we sometimes don't take advantage of that because we're so diminished by culture and within the culture of the human race in general, that we don't pay attention to that enough. And like I said, a lot of people may overlook that little bit, that little tiny tidbit. And even though Yo-Yo is the way she is on the surface, and then once you start to dig deeper into Yo-Yo and you see the golden eggs, that you call it, in her room, you know, trophies, and she had all kind of things and hopes, and Nancy Drew and Memphis and all this stuff, you know, within, you know, just a small box that she grew up in. She was always a sense of information and hope. And we take that for granted all the time. No matter what she's doing on the outside, we take that, like you said, nucleus that she holds as a woman and her purpose. We always take that for granted until we're compromised.
That's wrong.
Right.
And then we like, oh, hold on. We need that person. We need them. We need them to hold us together. We need them to, you know, give us hope. We need them so that our strength is even stronger. And it always happens when we're compromised.
You know, you even bring out this element of, and I'm gonna put some language to it, some biblical language to it. The woman is a helpmeet.
Come on.
The definition of a helpmeet. And this is why, you know, we have to be careful with listening to others who value things different than yourself. It is perfectly fine to be willing to learn and listen, but when you put yourself in a position to be compromised, right, for that to penetrate and shift your own perspectives, you start to lose the purpose of your identity as a believer. And so when you lose your identity as a believer, we end up being in positions where we are confused. Therefore, the demonstration or our behaviors of that, what we exhibit, are confused, and we end up being in several places in our life we are unfulfilled because we're not doing what we were designed to do. To be a helpmeet is not a bad thing. The definition is to be a helpful companion to another person. What's so wrong with that? Right. That's an honor. That's a power, right? That's a value. That is an asset to a pairing, right? When you're partnered with someone, to be a helpful companion. I consider that to be an honor, to be in a position where I could be a helpful companion. And so when you look at the woman consistently, even the other one, and her name slips my mind right now, the one who always wanted money. Even when they were coming up with the plan, they went to her often for it because Yo-Yo was taken. So they went to the next person that they had. They went to her and she helped them with that plan. She passed information from one person to the next over and over, and she went along with the plan. She didn't ask questions. She was helpful, right? And I don't want all the saints to come for me. She was playing a prostitute. That's not the point, y'all. We're talking about the principle here, the principle and the makeup of a woman. And so when we come to we got to get to this missing person, right? Because we saw missing person flyers, even the very clear one when Yo-Yo was taken. Right after that, they showed a missing persons flyer, and we know for years we've been seeing nothing but flyers come out on social media about our girls missing, and some of this is tied to human trafficking, and there are some other elements. Some people are believing that they're taking young girls and taking their organs. Some are going into sex trafficking. There's a lot of different theories and also facts that are out there, and not to even dive into that conversation, which I believe is a worthy conversation that we need to have on its own. It bleeds through the message that young Black girls are unimportant enough that they will not look. So we'll take them because they will not look. But think about what the role is of those young Black girls / women, to be a helpmeet. So if we take away what is presented to you to be a helpful companion to the men, my God, hold on.
Come
Then
on.
what does that mean? If we take away what is unhelpful, if we make you feel like, if we program you to see her as nothing more than a hoe, as nothing more than a collector of monies, then she cannot be of value to you. Therefore, you won't see her as a person who can be helpful. But that is exactly what she was designed to do for you. Whew. I am so sorry I have to pause it here. I know the conversation is really good, but make sure you are staying tuned for the next part. Come back on Wednesday. Ooh, I have to let you know before you go, if you hadn't already grabbed your ticket for the Battlefield Conference, go ahead and do it. We're going to have conversations similar to this at the conference. And if you were there last year, then you already know a little bit of taste of what we're going to be doing, but we're going to step it up a notch. We have plans in place that are here to not only help our community, but also so that you have a quality experience. So we're expecting to see you there. And as I mentioned, make sure that you are reaching out to me, information there in the chat, or not the chat, the description box. If you have a desire to bring a group and you are interested in a group rate, information is down below in the description box. Hope to see you all there. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your community, and be sure to share with someone specific to learn more about the depth that's in this movie. And if you hadn't watched it, go ahead and watch it. They Clone Tyrone on Netflix. And of course, before you go, remember, if I'm great and you're great, then we're a great community.